I'm going to call this regularly scheduled meeting of the Plain Township Board of Trustees, February 27, 2018 to order. Everybody please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We do have the agenda before us. I would like to point out to those in the audience, we do have a 6:15 Public Lighting District hearing. So we will be stopping our regular meeting at 6:15 to conduct that hearing. And then we'll continue our meeting directly after that public hearing. Do we have any additions, deletions, corrections for the agenda?
Yes, we do have an addition, sir. We will
So
have
that's zoning number 5.
zoning number 5.
For the 2537 Rome.
Correct.
Anything else? Okay, the agenda will stand, so we'll start with our first order on the agenda, and that will be the annual report. Captain Springer, are you going to do that, or?
We all have bits and pieces involved, sir.
All right. So it looks like we're pretty well represented.
I think we are, sir. Captain Ron Springer from Police Board on behalf of Sheriff Meyer. In front of you, first off, you should have paper copies of the monthly report. For time safety, for time length purposes, we decided to give you those paper copies. Linda's going to have a copy of it to be able to attach for the public meeting section of it, so the public knows what's going on. We're going to begin our annual report. Of course, you're all familiar with Sheriff Meyer. I can't tell you how pleased he is with the setup that we have here in Plain Township. He continually uses this as his model when he speaks with other townships about the policing services they need to provide for their communities. Of course, as you know, my name is Captain Ron Springer. Should anybody ever want to have a homeowners association meeting or a crime watch meeting, I do ask that they reach out to me. I've included my email address on the bottom part of the slide. Also with me tonight are your 2 supervisors. Sergeant Cliff Hall, he's working our day shift, 19-year veteran of our office. Been a patrol supervisor on midnight shift in the county. Reassigned to Plain Township December 2016. He also happens to be a Plain Township resident. We've included his email on the slide. And of course, you guys all know Sergeant Bill Koenig, 17-year veteran with our office. He was your previous detective unit assigned to the township. He's worked various positions that are listed there, and he's received several awards throughout his career as well. Once again, his email is listed. We want you to be able to put some faces with some names. This is your current Plain Township lineup. These are the people working your days, afternoons, and midnight shifts here. And the next slide has the remainder of the officers or deputies working assigned to the township. Calls for service, we've got a 4-year look-back period. So the light blue is kind of where we're at. 16 to 17. 11,645, what we're going to call calls for service this past year compared to about 11,000 a year prior. Part of that's attributed I'm not going to tell you it's a problem with crime inside the township as much as it is that you got some extra bodies on the ground and they're able to accomplish more things and keep the residents a little bit safer. We looked down at the call breakdown per month, once again a 4-year look back. This year was a little strange to us. We seem to see our peak or our highest activity in October. It's a little anomaly there for us. Alarm calls. Really have not seen a lot of change since last year. That's a good thing because last year was pretty low and this year remains pretty low. It's important to not tie those cars up with false alarms and to keep them out patrolling the streets as much as we can. Traffic activity report. On the left you can see property damage crashes, property damage only crashes. On the right hand side of the right chart you're going to see injury crashes. And the real small numbers down at the bottom are going to be the fatal crashes. It looks like, if you look at the light blue compared to the year prior, there's been an increase. However, what we have to take into consideration are what those gentlemen, the other guys wearing gray out there, the State Patrol are doing. So there's their activity. They had a slight decrease in activity as far as crashes handled. That's because we've had some more guys free on the streets, and we're able to increase the number of crashes that we're handling. Traffic stops. Left-hand side's traffic stops. The right-hand side chart is going to be traffic citations. Not every stop, 2,200 of them, ends in a citation, 1,800 of them. Sometimes they're warnings. Sometimes stops lead to more than one ticket at a time. And OSP has a little more free time because we're having some crashes, so they've been able to issue a few more citations to the residents and or people traveling through our township at least. Speed trailer, in cooperation with the road department, 53 locations last year it went out. That gives us our report. It better enables us to assign our assets to a specific area at a specific time to make the most effect on the traffic flow and patterns through the township. Rocco, would you like to chat for a minute or two? Sure. Yeah, you can say, hey, this is Rocco if you guys haven't seen him.
I'm Rocco Ross. I'm assigned to Plain Township as your detective. I've been on the department for 19 years. So I've been in Plain Township since June of 17. Reassigned to Plain Township. I worked the street in Plain for many years prior to. So last year our cases, as you see in the bottom there, our total cases assigned were 201 cases assigned. Obviously Bill and I kind of split those up. I came in June and picked up. So of those cases, we cleared 128 cases. So the graph there. Cases cleared are the red and the sign's the blue. In June, you'll see that there was a little bit of a spike there on both closed and assigned cases. And that's when we had that string of break-ins in cars, burglaries, that we were able to solve a lot of cases in those months, June, July. Some notable cases here. I'll let Bill talk about the first guy in a minute here, but the second guy, this Randall Jackson, he was our PNC and Dairy Queen robber that we were able to apprehend.
And he was responsible for several other robberies throughout Perry and Canton City, I believe.
Yeah. I think he had a total of about 11 robberies that he is responsible for and pled to all of them.
His mistake was coming into Plain Township. Sorry, Cody, sir?
Oh, yeah, this was one of my last cases that I handled before being promoted. That I thought was, I guess, notable. He's going to be spending the rest of his life in prison, so I think it was a good case that we were able to bring closure to for the community as well as the victim.
For the victim in that case, was that an adult or a juvenile?
The victim was 12.
And again, I just mentioned briefly a little bit ago about the car break-ins, burglaries around the summertime. These are the 3 individuals. There was a juvenile involved also that's not up there, but he was also convicted. They're all doing 4 years. But we were able to clear up a lot of cases that these guys were responsible for. Leads Online has been very helpful to us, and I will tell you right now, conducting an investigation on a lot of these recent burglaries we've been having over the past year pretty much. And Leads Online has led me to a lot of individuals to look at. I got a binder like that thick full of people I need to look into, so it's been very helpful to me. I mean, I'm sure the road guys look at it too.
Yeah, I've spent a lot of time with our road guys and giving them the tutorials and teaching them how to use this on a daily basis on their theft cases, and everybody's been utilizing it.
Very valuable resource that we have here. It's appreciated. It helps a lot.
Yep.
And as of course the board's aware, the cost for this is actually shared between the sheriff's office and Plain Township. So residents in the room, you may not be aware, this is actually a site where you can go to free of charge. It's an HTTPS, that's supposed to mean secure. It's secure as any bank or any other governmental institution. And you can register up to 100 items. 100 items in your household. So you can take a picture, get a receipt, you go down to Best Buy, you bought a brand new TV for the Super Bowl or something, you got a picture of it, you got the receipt, the make, model, serial number, any owner applied numbers, you can upload it to the site. And you don't have to provide your real information, you can log in with whatever kind of bogus user you want. So then if something bad happens, like your house burns down or somebody comes in your house and takes your TV, your insurance agent may want to be able to get that information. And now all this information is secured in the web at an off-site location. You can pull it down, provide to your insurance agent or law enforcement so they can get that information entered in a computer. We have 3 school resource officers. 2 of them are part-time. Jerry Elliott in the middle, and on the far right, Ali Montine. They are reserve officers that are paid and funded fully through the schools. They're part-time officers. However, with the recent week's activities, they're currently going to 8-hour workdays for the remainder of the year. And then we have an SRO, Deputy Chad Smith, which everybody knows Chad Smith. He does such a great job inside our schools for us. And the township shares some of that cost with the schools. So we thought it was really good to have Chad Smith come in tonight and talk a little bit about what the schools have been doing over the past year, or at least half of the school year.
Our numbers are staying pretty much the same. Assaults are down, damaging down, our drugs are down. We see a lot more unruly behavior, the kids, a lot of telecommunications harassment, just the basic school juvenile type complaints.
One thing I will point out is that last year up here, that red mark, there's a lot in there, 207 reports of school resource officers took and handled inside the schools. That's 207 times the deputies on the road patrol didn't have to go to the school and handle it because we have people capable inside our schools.
As you said, our arrests were down last year, that's this year. Arrests and summonses arrests were up last year, summonses were down. And you see the other activities were events. There happens a lot more for physical security in the building, such as games, choir performances, anything that goes on there in school now.
And so if like the Boy Scouts get a hold of you, Chad, you go out and talk to little Cub Packs and whatever they're called?
I've talked to, so far this calendar year, I've talked to a couple of Cub Scout troops. It's one of their things for their badges that they have to speak with a law enforcement officer before getting their one badge. Get to show them around, show them some of the equipment, and just have a little fun with them.
So all those, some of that other numbers includes the stuff outside of the school, the activities you're involved in as well.
Safety City, so we partner up with the fire department. We host Safety City over at Worcester Elementary School for those going from preschool into kindergarten. Just safety classes, a week long, 8 a.m. to 11:15. I'm sorry, 9 to 11:15. They put about 85 kids through last year, just rotating through different safety topics.
And historically, we've always kept this thing internal. We've always kept it inside of our office. Fire department reaches out to us. We're always going to be there. Chief, we're going to be there again for you this year. I haven't let Mr. Kelly know that yet, but we're on board with you, not a problem. This past year, we did something different. We have 2 special deputies through our office. They are school resource officers for Louisville. So they need to have a special commission to work at North Nemesholm Elementary School because it falls outside in the township. We invited them to come in and participate instead of using just internal people, because we're really trying to build those connections between all the school resource officers and all the police agencies. Where something bad happens, we're used to working with the person, and we understand and get along with them and get different viewpoints and bring fresh perspectives of things we're doing.
Also, they were starting their own Safety City at North Nim as well. They wanted to kind of get a little feel for what it was like.
There's some pictures as far as the Safety City event went. One of the things we also hosted last year along with the fire department was a tabletop training exercise at the school. And that's not something we publicize or really talk too much in depth about because it really kind of falls under school safety plans. But I think it's important for people to understand that there are a lot of trainings, activities, and meetings and drills that go on throughout the school year, helping to prepare our schools for any type of disaster, be it fire, tornado, or some type of active shooter event. Part of that preparing the community and getting out is also our Operation Safe School Bus. In Plain Township, these are numbers just inside Plain Township, 736 contacts. We had deputies on 9 different buses. Made contact with 443 students. We followed 18 different bus routes, and we only stopped about 26 cars. So that's that School Bus Safety Week we push out, just reminding the people traveling through the township that kids are getting on and off the buses, and please slow down. And I think you guys are about ready for your next meeting, so.
Thank you. Just hold that thought. We're going to come right back to you. So it is time, 6:15. We will move to our public hearing regarding the lighting district for Lexington Farms North, number 1 and number 2. And I will turn this over to our fiscal officer, Mr. Wolf.
Thank you. For this public hearing, we have a request to establish a lighting district in the new phase of Lexington Farms. It's titled Lexington Farms North, number 1 and number 2. So if there's anyone here to speak for or against it, so you can come up and give your name and address for the record.
I'm Patrick Long from Lexington Farms North. I'm here if there are any questions, otherwise I don't have anything to say.
So you would be in favor? He's a developer.
I would be in favor, I'm the developer, yes.
But you have a general interest? Yes. Yeah, wow. Well, hearing none, I will make a motion. Whereas a petition to light artificially the streets and public ways in an unincorporated district in this township was filed with the Plain Township Fiscal Officer on January 16, 2018, and was presented to the Plain Township Board of Trustees on January 23, 2018, resolution number 18-047. And whereas the petition was signed by owners of more than one half of the front feet of the lots and lands abutting on the streets and public ways of the aforesaid district, and that the petition complied with law in specifying the metes and bounds of the district, but included no lands more than 660 feet from, nor any lands not abutting on, the streets and public ways in such districts. And whereas notice of the hearing before the Plain Township Board of Trustees on the petition for February 27, 2018 was duly and timely served on all lot owners and corporations affected by the proposed improvement, and was duly and timely published against non-residents pursuant to revised code 515.04, and return of due service and publication was made according to law. Now, therefore, be it hereby resolved by the Plain Township Board of Trustees, Stark County, Ohio, to approve the petition for lighting districts for Lexington Farms North Number 1 and Lexington Farms North Number 2 with 5 standard 100-watt colonial top poles consistent with the existing lighting district for Lexington Farms to be located as follows. Lexington Farms North Number 1 at the corner of lots 2 and 3 on Thistledown Circle Northeast, at the corner of lots 6 and 7 on Thistledown Circle Northeast, Lexington Farms North Number 2 at the corner of lots 21 and 22 on Gatehouse Northeast, at the corner of lots 24 and 25 on Leastone Avenue Northeast, at the corner of lots 28 and 29 on Leastone Avenue Northeast, and be it further resolved by the Plain Township Board of Trustees to authorize the Plain Township Clerk to certify this cost as a special assessment to the property owners, to the Stark County Auditor, and authorize American Electric Power to install the lights per the agreement. Second. It's been moved and seconded. Discussion. Roll call.
Mr. Hawes?
Yes.
Mr. Lino?
Yes.
Mr. Sabo?
Yes. That concludes the public hearing. Thanks for your patience. It's all yours again, Captain.
Thank you.
We just want to point out some of the community activities we've been involved in this past year. Of course, we're involved with the Avondale HOA meeting, Twinbrook Crime Watch meeting, Sherwood Village HOA meeting, Shine Village HOA meeting, Samantha's Coffee with the Cop, there's one down on Hillsdale's, the Avondale Hero Luncheon, First Christian Daycare visits, Easter egg drop, VBS deputy visits. So what happens is during vacation Bible school times, part of things Deputy Smith does over the summer is reach out to the local churches, find out when they're having the kids present. And we just try and get a deputy to meet them in the parking lot when they're arriving or when they're leaving. Just kind of give them some high fives and say hey. Some scouting activities, and as well as a business outreach program. Just some photos of the various community events. Stark County OVI Task Force. This is funded completely outside of Plain Township, so this is a cost or benefit added at no cost to the township. We conducted 8 checkpoints this previous year, 2,653 vehicles checked, 6 OVIs, dangerous drivers gotten off the road, 4 no Ohio operators license citations, 19 driving under suspension citations, 8 criminal charges, and 36 other citations. It's well known that you can catch more drunk drivers, dangerous drivers, by just taking this law enforcement presence, putting them out in patrol cars, and patrolling an area. However, you get much better community awareness, and the message spreads, and you just can't count the number of people you prevented those nights from driving drunk and possibly harming themselves or somebody else. We conduct compliance checks in Plain Township. This is, once again, cost-free to the township. This is a grant funded fully through Stark County Anti-Drug Coalition. Stark County Sheriff's Office staffs this. We take an underage person, somebody 20 years of age or younger, who does not look excessively old for their age, and we take them out and put them into businesses. And we have to see if the businesses will sell alcohol to them. If they do, we charge the clerk that sold the alcohol. There's an education piece that goes with that as well. So Sharon George, as part of Safe Communities for the Stark County Sheriff's Office, trains these clerks and trains these bartenders how to check for IDs, how to tell when somebody's had too much to continue to be served. This is kind of our enforcement piece. And those places that do not sell end up getting a letter of recognition on the City of Stark County Anti-Drug Coalition saying, hey, thanks, we checked your place on a couple occasions and y'all did the right thing, please keep it up. If they should sell inside Plain Township, we go back and continue to check them. And we do that to beat them into compliance. Because eventually they start asking for IDs and then we just go other places. So on that, 39 compliance checks were completed, 4 citations were issued, 35 of the checks were found to be in compliance. Vehicle report. We do have 2 new vehicles currently on order. However, unlike last year's meeting, they're not in the parking lot tonight. I've highlighted 4 of the vehicles on the top right. These are cars with mileage over 100,000 miles. So Toyota Motor Corporation did a study on lease vehicles and when's the best time to turn vehicles back in so that you get the most bang for your buck. And they really recommend that 90,000 mile mark. We're a little short on cars. We've got 2 more coming in. That's going to be good. Hopefully I can get back to the township later this year and look at replacing a couple of the cars we do have. And finally here, Plain Dispatch Service. This is the wrong slide or not updated. It says, no, this is correct. I'll stand corrected here. In August of 13, y'all went over with the Sheriff's Office as far as cost savings for fire dispatch. Currently we have 20 dispatchers, 1 TAC officer, and 1 StarCom supervisor, which is Jamie Wood. A total of 5,043 fire calls were dispatched in 2017, and as far as the police side, calls or police activities logged were 20,944. It's a different number from earlier in the presentation, just by definition. The number way up front was talking about calls for service. This is police activities logged. While we have anybody here, does anybody have any questions?
Thorough as always, and you've continued to get us on a good cycle and working with Lisa on our fleet replacement that I know when I came on 8 years ago, I mean, it was bad. That's the only way to sum it up. Do appreciate all the extreme value add that comes through with the traffic, the increased traffic stops, UOVI. Working, once or twice at checkpoint line, it definitely, puts into perspective, the awareness factor, but as well, sitting and watching some of the folks that think they're going to skate it through the neighborhoods and getting to see the chase cars, that down. So, hands down, I think this is the best bang for the buck anybody's got when it comes to policing services anywhere in the county. So, thanks for the work you guys do.
Absolutely, sir.
Yeah, especially for the last couple of weeks, you guys took a proactive approach to all of that as well, so.
It makes it all worthwhile when those kids come up to you because they see you and they say thank you for what you're doing. We appreciate it.
Good. Are you finished then?
Yes, sir.
Is there anybody in the audience that has any questions for the sheriff this time? All right, if not, we will move to the next part of our agenda, new business. First on the agenda is Stark and Tuscarawas County 2018-19 yard waste proposal. Who's going to do that?
Well, I'll just introduce.
Yes, we have David Held.
Yes, thank you.
You would be the director? I'm
Perfect.
sorry, I don't want to demote
Yes,
you.
yes.
Okay, so,
I'm going to get, our captain here provides full service, which we appreciate. Thank you. I noticed I had a few short presentations. Thank you, Captain. And so, yeah, I appreciate you inviting me here today. I'm fine.
Good, how are you?
And so, what I'd like to do, I wish I would have brought like a PowerPoint with me, but I didn't realize that you guys upgraded here. I like the presentation. I'm going to keep one for myself and pass those down. And So what we've done is, first off, for the record, my name is David Held. I work as the executive director at the Stark Task Wayne Solid Waste District, and we're at 9918, in 9918 Wilshire Boulevard in Bolivar, Ohio. And so I was invited up here by the trustees and Lisa Campbell to come up and talk to you about the yard waste program. And what I'd like to do is I'll just, we put together a presentation because I had an opportunity to go and talk to New Michelin Township. We talked to the Township, Stark County Township Association meeting, which we had our representatives there. And then we also spoke with Perry Township, Jackson Township, so we're trying to get around to all the different townships. We'll start with the first slide. And this really, what I'm hoping to do is we'll just run through these quickly because after receiving a number of different questions, hopefully we'll cover most of your questions in this, but if you have any during the presentation, let me know and we'll be able to address those. So when you look at how the district's money is spent, the first slide here where it says total expenditures 2014, this first slide right here. This basically is a pie chart as far as how the money is appropriated. If you look in the upper left-hand corner, our total expenses in 2014 were roughly $2.8 million. Our revenue at the time was $4.1 million. So clearly we were bringing in more money than what we were spending. And then you look at the breakout, in the orange, we got a large portion of that going to the drop-off recycling. Plain Township has been a great partner in the area of recycling and in yard waste, because we have a number of drop-offs here in Plain Township. Your staff is excellent. Lisa is very responsive, and so is Rob Steinberg. I mean, everybody that we work with does an excellent, excellent job. So we very much appreciate that. So most of the effort is in the drop-off recycling. People will come in and they drop off their paper, plastic, glass, aluminum cans at the drop-offs. We had problems as far as dumping in the higher volume sites, but we've got the cameras up, and I know that those are working very well because you have a nice camera system here in Plain Township. We've got a few glitches with the one camera over on Diamond, but we're going to work through that through the IT. You got that taken care of? Okay, good. So we've got that taken care of. Those are excellent because then the Sheriff's Department, we have the Stark County Sheriff Officer of the Year was Chris Newman, who's with the Stark Sheriff's Department, and he is the litter deputy. So the district pays him full-time to manage all the dump sites and any problems that they have with yard waste. So when you look at this pie here, the reason I put this first chart on here is if you look at the next slide, you see the green. In 2014, there is no green. And in 2017, you see that green slice down there at the bottom. That's yard waste. So we went from 0 in 2014 in yard waste expenditures to $439,000. And you can see also in the upper left-hand corner our total expenses during that time in 2017 went up to $4.5 million. Okay? And our revenue was at $4 million. Okay? So you can see that our expenses continue to go up. And then when you look over in the upper right-hand corner, the Ohio EPA requires that we provide recycling drop-offs. That's a requirement. Yard waste is not a requirement. Household hazardous waste collection is not a requirement. We have to promote those things, but we don't have to conduct a collection. We must collect recycling drop-offs or curbside. Okay? Now the next page, look at the tipping fee revenue. So we make money at the district. We're exclusively funded through a fee that every ton of waste that's dumped in a landfill, we collect either $1 from our residents and businesses here in Stark County for that. If you're outside the district, we collect $2. If you're outside of the state, which is a very, very low volume, we collect $2. Okay? No, I'm sorry, $1. And the reason being is you have the interstate commerce laws, which say whatever you charge for your residents, you got to charge for the same out of state. But the reason this slide is important, if you look at the red, back in 1994, the revenue was about $2.8 million. Then if you look at 2004, that's when I first started at the district, $6.2 million. And then since that time, the revenue just seemed to go downhill after that. It dropped as low as $2.7 million. And that's because you have contracts with the waste haulers. If Republic has a contract with the city of Cleveland, they bring the waste to their landfill, which is American Landfill here in Stark County. When Rumpke took the contract over, they were going to take the waste to their landfill, which is now in Mansfield. So when these contracts change, the flow of waste goes with whoever has the contract. And then, of course, our revenue changes. So it can change, usually the contracts are every 1 to 3 years, so it's a very volatile environment. So that's where you can see the volatility in the revenue. And also another interesting point, if you see the yellow line there, the yellow dotted yellow line, that shows our in-district waste. And of course, we've been pretty consistent with the population, but you can see that minor dip there in 2009, and that's due to the economic downturn. So we do know that the economy, the health of the economy is reflected in the waste that we produce. And it dropped down, and it started to come back up, but it's never really reached the level that we had in 2006 and 2007. But I think a lot of that has to do with the amount of material that is generated as far as waste. A plastic bottle weighs less, aluminum cans weigh less, there's less newspaper, so there's less waste that's being generated overall because the material that they're using is changing. And then we'll look at the next slide here, and it's the total expenses versus our fund balance. So sometimes people would say, oh, well, the district has loads of money, you should loosen up your financial reins and just pay for this yard waste. And the thing is back in 2007, we had $9.9 million. And that amount dropped really quickly. And the reason that dropped is the Ohio EPA, when we were challenging their decisions on the landfills, they said, well, they didn't say it, but it was kind of implied that they didn't like the fact that we were challenging them at the Environmental Review Appeals Commission. So they set up a budget for us, they took over our plan, and they set our expenditures at $8.1 million in 2008, and they set up our expenditures at $8.3 million in 2009. So we spent down our reserve balance, down to the point where we're at 3.3. We've determined that we have to keep it at around 1 year's worth of revenue, so it's about 3.5 million that we're required. This is self-imposed as reserves because you have volatility in the revenue. And so right now in 2016, 2017, we're keeping about a little bit more than 1 year's revenue on hand. And but again, with the volatility in our revenue, it can be a real challenge. So I think we're in a solid, stable place. And that's where we got to be really careful with what we spend. So if you look at the next page, the total yard waste expenses. In 2008, we were spending nearly $700,000 in yard waste collection. And then it started to drop, $570,000. And in 2010, it was virtually non-existent as far as an expense. It says $39,000, but that was just carryover expenses from the previous year. And then all through 11, 12, 13, and 14, we spent no money on yard waste. The reason being is there was a lot of value in yard waste. So the companies that collect it and they turn it into compost or mulch like earth and wood, they were buying semi-loads for $600 a pop. And they were collecting it from the site in Plain Township at Worsler Brothers and also behind the fire station at no cost. We loved it. So we even added a few. We thought, oh, this is great. There's no cost here. So we went from 8 sites up to 15. And then in 2015, the yard waste market started to change. You have the pipelines that were coming through, a lot of additional clearing for bringing the pipelines through. There was a company, Stone Container, down in Coshocton. They made corrugated cardboard. They would collect up to 30 semi-loads a day of wood chips. They would buy it. And so when they closed in 2016, now you have 1 million yards of yard waste in this market, in combination with the Nexus pipeline, in combination with the Rover pipeline. So we got a lot of volume. Most of the places, I talked with Sean Worsler today, he has material that he cannot sell. He has material that he can't even give away at a wholesale level, right? So, and that's because the market's changing. People are buying stone instead of the mulch. So the retail market's going down, and at the same time, there's just a massive amount of yard waste. So you can see with the saturation in the market, then of course, Craig Sneed, who we contract with, says, well, now I'm going to charge it instead of $100 a load, it's going to be $112 a load. Then the next year, it's going to be $124 a load. Now in 2018, he says it's going to be $145 a load. So our costs just kept going up. So what we did, in 2018, we said we have to set the amount at $300,000. Just find a way to budget at $300,000. And what we didn't want to do is we didn't want to leave the township in a bad spot. So we appropriated approximately another $100,000 for 2018, okay? And this red mark here was what was projected for $145 a load. So right now, we've got 400 grand, and we just have to reduce the number of sites, or we have to better control the flow, or we have to better, negotiate the contract as far as what we do with the others. Myself, we have exhausted negotiating the contract because there's really one person to negotiate with, and that's Craig Sneed at Earth and Wood. He's like the Walmart of yard waste. We've worked very well with him. He's been very responsive. The other company that we used to work with, Wise Garber, that gave excellent service, they no longer collect the yard waste. So the one concern that we have, there's really two issues. One is the cost keeps going up, and secondly, my concern is if we don't have a place to take the material. What happens when the sites are filled up? And especially our fire chief, when you load that mulch and you keep loading it and you put it up, what happens? It catches fire. And so they have a daily fire, not one that brings in the fire department, but at Earth and Wood, Craig Sneed told us that, I said, Craig, you got a limited amount of land here. And I said, so what do you do? He goes, well, we just stack it higher. And he said, but it does create more combustion and they have more fires. So it's harder to manage. But at some point, he's got 3 years worth of material right now. At some point, there's a limit. I just don't know what that limit is, but I do know he's bringing in about 20 semi-loads a day at $200 a pop. So he used to pay $600 for a truckload. Now they're dropping it off to him and paying him to take it. The other locations, they don't have enough room. So the market's saturated. It's not just the cost, but it's just being very, very strategic as far as how we handle the intake. If you go to the next slide, what we did is we put together a proposal, and this is in cooperation with the Stark County Commissioners. And keep in mind that 95% of the yard waste that's spent at the solid waste district is going to Stark County. We have a 3-county board, so we have 3 from Wayne County, 3 commissioners, 3 from Tuscarawas County, 3 from Stark County. So even if you're calling the Stark County Commissioners and saying, we've got to have this, keep in mind, they'll all unanimously support their own county, but in Wayne County, we spend $0 on yard waste. In Tuscarawas County, we'll spend probably a little less than $20,000. But their populations are smaller, their demographics are different, they're more, Wayne County is predominantly rural, so they don't have as much demand for the yard waste like we do in the more urban areas and suburban areas of Plain Township. And then Tuscarawas County is the least populated area. 92,000, Stark is about 370,000, so there's different demographics, different needs. So what we're going to do with this here is we just looked at all 12 sites. We did remove the Worsler brothers. I did talk with Sean Worsler already today and explain to him why we were going to close that site. And I know that the street department, or the road department has already removed the signs over there at Worsler Brothers. And, naturally, it's an uncomfortable situation for the Worslers because people are calling them, just as I'm sure they're calling your township, just as they're calling us at the district, especially with the nice weather. But the problem is, and what we want to do, and we'd like to get this out to all the residents, is that we're really concerned about having a place to take all this material. Plain Township has been a model yard waste site. Because you have gates, you've got cameras, and you restrict the flow. The other sites, some of them have kept the sites wide open. We were okay with that. It wasn't a bad thing. It's just that when it was free, we didn't care if a commercial company came in and dropped off a tree trunk at midnight because Earth and Wood would take it. Our volume was going up, and even though it isn't intended for commercial It didn't cost us anything, so nobody made a big issue out of it. Now that we're paying for it, we have to tighten up the reins, we have to target it exclusively for residents, and we've got to find a different way of doing it. So, as you look through all of this, in the first, what we did is we listed all the sites. The ones in blue are Stark County sites. The ones in the orange color, those are Tuscarawas County sites. The one in yellow is Wersler Brothers, and so what we did is we eliminated that site for a couple of reasons. Number one, we needed to reduce the number of sites, but number two, it was a private company, and they were also located in Plain Township. In Plain Township, we were fortunate enough for many years to have 2 sites, which was great for your township. But then some of the other townships, they only have 1, or they have 0. And the residents typically look at the service as a great service, but then it's a big burden on the employees and the staff of the township and the budget of the township. So after we went through this whole formula, we looked at the population, we looked at the number of loads that each site had in 2017. So we based it on volume. And when you look at Plain Township, you folks were at 417 loads. You're at 3,500 tons. Okay, you're the third one down. And the total volume that you had out of all that was collected was 11%. So we had a total of 31,815 tons, and you were approximately 11%, but you were number 3. The other 2 sites, Jackson did not restrict their intake. So they had gates, but they kept the gates open as a convenience to the residents. Those gates are going to be closed now in the coming summer. Lake Township, they follow the same model that you have, and they lock up their gates. Okay? So really, Lake and Plain, I don't think that putting, we're looking at Jackson Township and thinking if they lock up the gate, their volume should align more with what yours is. But that's just a projection. So then you look at the total cost for the district to haul this. And the district spent $46,000 hauling yard waste for that particular site. We also spent another $29,000 at the Wersler Brothers. So really, we were about, in both sites, there was over $90,000 that was spent there. So we looked at each site, we based it on volume, and then we looked at what the projected cost was going to be in 2018 based on $145 per load haul, and what the expense would be based on 2017's volume to the township for this site would be $60,000. So what we decided to do is we'll say that the district will say, okay, we'll give you $48,000. We took a percentage. And then you also have the yard waste or the host community cleanup grant, which is $2,500. And then when you add those 2 together, it'd be $51,000. So we're looking at the projected expense. If the volume remained exactly the same, it would cost the township $9,146. Okay? Now, when we were at the Township Association, Joe, you had mentioned to me about, we had 2 sites, and now it's going to put more of a burden on the township. And that's a very good point, because I'm sure that it will, or it very well could. But then also, some of those people, might go to Jackson, they might go to Canton Township. We're just not sure, but I'm sure, a large percentage of them will go to the other site. But we were trying to find the fairest way that we could to appropriate the money. And so we just took all the sites and we did it on volume based on 2017. We also closed all the sites from January 1st to possibly the middle of March. But the thing that we know is that we just have to control the volume. And what I'm concerned about is that as we get through part of the year, and this is where I think it's going to be the best for Plain Township, is that you open and you close the gates and you have restricted hours. If you go to the city of Massillon, they're not on our list, but they have a yard waste collection. They pay for it themselves, and their site's open from 7 to 3:30, and that gate closes automatically. Now people will say, "Oh, it's not convenient." Well, you could argue that it's not really at a convenient time, but they do control their volume. So we don't have, a specific recommendation, because I think that all of your staff here has a better idea as far as how to manage the flow and which days and how to keep it open. But we're just trying to transition into a period of uncertainty with yard waste. We just simply don't know. If we had all of your residents, that were here present, we would just say there is no way that we can ensure the sustainability of the program, even if the funds were unlimited. Because again, it goes back to where we can take the material. We did think about, buying 20 acres and just having a site. But then we'd be running into the same problem that the Worsler brothers are faced with. They have like 3 years of material, and then they gotta go in weekly, and they've gotta turn it, windrow it. So that's where we're at right now. Go to the next page. This was another recommendation. And this is really gonna be based on 2019, because again, we have $100,000 in transition funding this year, and when you look at 2019, we're gonna be, we're projected to have budgeted $300,000. So the amount that we're able to give out at the district is going to go down. We're hoping at that point we'll have fewer sites, we'll have a better handle on managing the intake, and maybe the market will change at that point. Maybe we'll be able to, change, the contract and the cost. But based on having the reduction in the grant in 2019, Plain Township will be it would be a cost of $22,000 if everything remained the same. So what we're looking to do is any ideas that you as elected officials have, that your staff has, that any of your residents have, we are open to it because we like to brainstorm and find ways that we can improve things. A number of residents have called me and said, well, this is terrible, this is a great service. It is a great service. Again, it's not a requirement, and it's an expensive service for the developer. And then the last page here we have is, I've got two pages, and then we'll wrap this up, is that when you look at the other 52 districts around the state, how many of them have the program that we have here in Stark County? They just don't provide that. Most, if you go to Cuyahoga County, if you go to Summit County, those residents up there take their yard waste to a compost facility, and in some cases they probably pay to dispose of it, or they put it in the garbage. Or some trustees have told us that they put it in ditches, which we don't want that, we don't encourage that, it's illegal. But it's just, we provided a great service, the trustees and their department heads provided a great service here over the years, but it's just, we're just at a point where as we collect this, we're not quite sure what we can do with it. And lastly, here's a list of the compost facilities that are in this area. And you can see the ones in the yellow are the ones that reported large volumes. And again, it's not required that they report their tonnage, but you can see how Earth and Wood is collecting 24,000 tons. And the next site is over just south of the line. It's 4,700 tons, and that's Mike's Tree and Landscape. So, and the others are just very small. So that's where we're at. And the recommendation that we would have to the township at this point is to proceed with what you're doing, and with the locked gates, and then also restricting the commercial businesses, because that's not what it's intended for. If you were to have anybody that's dumping, then you call the sheriff, and Chris Newman. That's what he does full time, because he will follow up on any dumps and any problems. If you have any questions or thoughts.
The only sad thing with, I understand this was a good presentation, and enlightened me a little bit more to understanding it. The burden that we're going to have on our fire station on Easton. But the most highly populated tree area in Plain Township is the west end, is Avondale. And now they just lost their site. So what happens to us, Joe? We're going to have the majority, probably all of Avondale now. When you get a storm, we're talking a lot of limbs.
And if there, and the storms, that's a good point, because I didn't bring this up. We do have separate funding for storms. So if there was a storm like we had through Lake Township when they had all those, what's that? Yeah, the microburst, right. When they had the microburst come through, and we've had them, a number of them over the years. We do have separate funding for that. So I didn't mean to interject there. I just wanted to add,
To clarify, the 2019 numbers are not set in stone, correct? At the end of 18, the numbers are revisited to see how the trends
Yeah, I mean, that's
shift.
what,
I mean, that was what was discussed at the County Township Association meeting, so that's what I wanted.
Yeah, that's a good point. I would say that what's set in stone is our 5-year plan at the district, so we have to submit a 5-year plan. And we will, we put in there $300,000 for the yard waste. But it doesn't mean that additional money couldn't be appropriated if there was, if we came up with another solution or, but I just don't want to, I don't want to set expectations that are false. So what we do know is we will have $300,000.
I think though, I mean, obviously there's money in the bank for whatever year that's gonna be. Our biggest concern is what's gonna take place with the Whistler site closing down. Because even if we get half, just half, because when you calculated these figures for the tonnages, you didn't include the 2,219 from the Whistler site.
Right, you're right.
It's gonna go somewhere.
You're right.
Our fear is, if in reality we get half of that, say we only get 1,100 tons, half of that, then we should be getting 15% of the money
Right.
instead of our 11 or 12, whatever it came to.
Right.
Actually, we got 12.2. Now, that's deceiving because these percentages are based on the total amount, but the calculations are based on taking the 2219 out of the Whistler. So my frustration is, if that goes up that amount, that's almost $12,000 for us. And we're pinching pennies, and I understand everybody's pinching pennies. All I'm looking at is, we would just like to have a fair amount.
Yeah, right, I understand that. And that's a very good point.
So we would, maybe this can't be changed now, maybe this has already been done,
No,
but I would
it's-
agree with Scott, next year, but if this hasn't been done, I would certainly like to come, and if I had to,
Yeah, it's an address like the.
make my address to that as to what could happen, because that's almost $12,000 for us. And I, like Al, believe people get into that routine.
Yeah.
So on this side, they know exactly when that thing's open and exactly when it's closed. They may not like it, but they know it, and they're going to use it. I believe the people on the other side are going to do the same thing. They're really going to be frustrated with the closing, but they're also going to know, I can take my stuff over there, and I think they will establish a routine to do that.
You mean to bring it over to the.
Over to our site here, which now means, obviously, the tonnage there goes up.
Yeah.
That's my concern, because right now, we're speculating where they're going to take it. I mean, we're kind of doing this with human nature.
Right.
What's their routine going to become? And we don't know.
We don't know.
But I gotta believe that our residents, because they're Wayne Township loyal residents, are going to believe that I'm going to my site,
Right.
even though it's technically everybody's
No,
site.
I agree with you. What I will do is I will take this back to our board, and because one of the things we're not sure of too is that I believe some of the sites are going to drop off, and so one thing is.
What happens with that funding?
Yeah.
Does that go back in the kitty, does it get
Right.
redistributed,
Right.
or is that just seen as a
Yeah,
potential net savings for
yeah.
2018, and it makes the transition into 19?
Right, that's a good question. And I don't have an answer on that, but I think it's clear that there's, some flexibility that we have. One of the things we have to think of is whether or not, let's say that there's a funding adjustment, then the township would have to consider, would you still keep the one site open? And, because at some point in 2019, you're going to be faced with the same thing. And our thought is, what we decided to do at the district is when we went from 15 sites to 10 sites, we just strategically picked 5 sites to close. And why did we pick those sites? They were the ones that were furthest away from Earth and Wood. And so Earth and Wood would give us a contract, and they would say whether we pick it up in Brewster or we pick it up in Lake or Plain, which are the closest, or Jackson, then we're going to pay the same amount. but he wanted all the sites. So really, the sites that were closer were paying the same, the district was paying for it. So what we could do is, it's something that the trustees would have to think about if there was an adjustment that we made in the funding based on the number of sites that are participating. It still might be better to have one site because we just don't, but that's going to be something that you folks would have to deal with. I don't see it getting any easier next year. And it's simply because you have the market that's changing. And one other side note is that if you have a semi-load of yard waste, it's prohibited from a landfill. So it's not permitted to go on landfill. Now, if you take your bag of grass and you put it at the curb, it's perfectly legal. And that was a law that was passed like back in the 80s. The Ohio EPA made a recommendation to prohibit yard waste from the landfills. But, my assessment, this is my personal assessment, is that they didn't recognize how much volume there would be, and that there wasn't enough sites to manage all the volume. So then they modified their enforcement and said if it's commingled with garbage, then it can go to a landfill. So it's still legal for your residents to put yard waste in the garbage, but the big truckloads have to take it to a compost site, and that's where I believe that when you have the big places like Earth and Wood, he's going to accommodate those sites because, he could charge them more. And then at some point, when that site is limited, So what I'll do is I will go back and take your concerns to the Stark County Commissioners, and certainly you can feel free to call them about that. But I'll make sure and get a hold of them, if not tonight, tomorrow, to let them know that, and then see what we can do as far as adjusting. But I just don't know what, I don't have anything to offer right now because I just don't know where we're going to be at. But our board meeting is this Friday, and we'll probably have a better idea how many participants. I think there's a couple of sites that are not going to open up. So Lawrence Township has told us that they are committed to keeping their site closed, and I believe Tuscarawas Township. And so that's where we're at with this. I believe Jackson Township is looking at their options. Another thought too is that just brainstorming, we had one site that was thinking about just keeping open for the last quarter, like leaf season. Like you just keep it open during the leaf season, and like let's say September through October, because that's where actually the weight isn't as much. When you look at the total volume, it's basically 6% in the first quarter, and then the rest is a third, with maybe 34% in the fourth quarter.
David, let me ask you a crazy question though. Are you allowed to have shared sites? Because the Whistler, less than a mile is Jackson Township. Mm-hmm. Over here on Easton, less than a mile is the city of North Canton. Can sites be shared?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. See, that's like a.
Regardless of where they're attending.
But I mean, shared,
they're all start.
us involved in the cost.
Right.
Yes.
So from a cost sharing.
Cost sharing, yes. Jackson and Plain are now.
So what happened, that's a very good point. And so what happened was with Louisville and Nimishillen, Louisville had a yard waste collection site, and the EPA didn't like that it was close to a storm drain, which was close to a creek, and so they recommended that they close it. And so when they closed it, Nimishillen, of course, had a massive influx of yard waste. And so Louisville does participate, in a sharing of that site.
Is that possible then?
Yeah, I mean, really, what we're
Jackson, North, they're both this close.
What we're looking at is, see, others, when you look at it from a critical standpoint, if you have like the consultants that work with us across the state, they look and say, what are you doing? You're hauling yard waste from a township to the site, and they look at it from a different perspective. They're saying, Jackson Township was 4 miles from Earth and Wood, and you're spending $70,000 to haul it down the road, and it's not ground. So if you grind it up, you could get, 3 loads for every 1 load. But the problem is, if you're at a site that is near residential homes, people aren't gonna wanna hear that grinder humming for, now, you know, Lake Township, they're grinding right now with Metcalf, so they're planning on going to Metcalf. And they're gonna grind and haul it to Metcalf. And, you know, that's the approach that they're going to be taking. So what we would do is this, is that what we can assure you of, you know, our recommendation to the board this Friday is going to be that, you know, you get the fixed amount that is based on the 400,000, so that for Plain Township is set at 48,000, plus you get the 2,500 for the host community cleanup grant. So I'm confident that that will pass this Friday. I don't expect it to. And then what we'll do is we're going to look to see how many sites we have and how much additional funding we have to see where else we can help you out. But I would think the challenge to Plain Township would be to decide, you know, based on the funding, what is the best way you can spend it? Is it, you know, having one site? I would think, my own opinion, I would stress that it's, you know, we're not in an expanding market. We are in a shrinking yard waste collection market. And I think the sooner you reduce your collections and your sites, it's just going to make it easier to manage. Because then in the event that you had to close it due to not having a place to take it, it would be easier to close one site than it would be 2 or 3. So we would give a block grant, and we would give you like the first quarter up front, and then, but we would give you a specific amount, and how you would spend it would be up to you folks. And then we would ask, Earth and Wood would honor the $145 a ton. If you had another company that could haul it at a less expense, or somebody else that could take it or manage it, you could do that too. But we just are pretty confident that it's going to be tough to find that, because we haven't been able to find it, and you know, but you know, you never know. There could be an article in the paper and somebody decides to do something differently. But I would caution you that a lot of the sites, they may have a very hungry appetite to increase their business, but then just go out and look at the site. You know, if they got like 4 acres or 3 acres, you know, we're talking a lot of truckloads. Okay?
So the grant dollars, do they come direct to us, or do they pay the haulers?
You know, we're going to send it directly to you. That's
Okay.
a very good question. We're going to send it directly to the township, and then we'll just call it a block grant. We're going to give you a designated amount, and which is specified here. And then, but then it would be up to you folks to either pay the additional amount, and that's where some were saying, okay, maybe later we open it up in a year. You know, do we keep it open just during leaf season? Do we, you know, how do we handle this?
And I'm guessing from an overall accountability standpoint, you would definitely want to log tonnages and all that kind of
Yes,
stuff.
yeah.
Because even in your stats, you would,
Yeah, you still have to report the expenses, so it's not
Exactly.
like we're just giving it and saying, hey, spend it however you want.
Sure.
You've got to, so it would be a reimbursement. We would give you the money up front, but you would still have to be able to justify that you had so many loads.
and those numbers would be the only way you could fairly distribute all this in the first place for the next time.
Right. But if you come up with a creative way, you know, that is, you know, going to be a cost savings, you know, we'll work with you on that too. It's just that, you know, you can't go out there and say, we're going to spend it on, you know, buying new picnic tables or, you know, something like that. Because it would be specifically for the yard waste program. You know, employees or.
So whether we load the volume in with front end bucket loader as is, or we're grinding it in to get more tonnage, we're compacting the volume is what we are.
We're looking at that option, yes.
Loads a load.
Who will keep track of those loads?
Usually the company that you contract with, what they'll do is they have to keep track of, you know, obviously for invoice purposes, because they would be billing, like at the solid waste district, Earth and Wood, they give us a weight ticket on each truck. So every load that they collect, there is a weight ticket. We actually, we didn't require them to weigh it this past year, because it's a lot of extra work. And when we look at all the loads, they're about 8.5 tons per load. But you have to be careful, because sometimes the person wood shows up on Monday morning, 8 o'clock, and you don't have that bin full, they're gonna haul it, whether it's half full or, but I wouldn't say that that's too big of a problem, especially with you folks. It's usually-
They'll send them weight tickets to us.
Yeah, they would send those weight tickets to you folks. See, because one of the other issues is that, we have to make sure that the townships are managing their own volume. Because historically, we did that for everybody, and we just always paid whatever that amount was. And so, but we're not gonna be able to do that. We need to have the townships come up with, different ideas or different ways to manage it. And obviously, the incentive to having a more comprehensive management of the program is that it's like, okay, here's the money, and, what's the best way to spend it? And we're hoping that we could come up with some innovative ideas or strategies, as far as what satisfying the residents.
David, you had mentioned at the Township Association meeting the other night, you have a grant for automatic gates.
Yes.
How do we?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So we have what's called a program startup grant, and we could fund an automatic gate. And so we've put them up in a number of places. They work really well. I actually had it tested, not intentionally, but when I was in Massillon, I was over there looking at their yard waste site, and I got their recycling drop off, and I got locked in at like 3:30. And I was like, oh boy, what do I do now? And so I just pulled up, thinking, looking for a button or something to press, it automatically opens. So then I learned that they have an electronic eye, so that if somebody is behind it in their car, it automatically opens. So that if somebody were to if it were to close, let's say at 7 p.m. or 6 p.m. and the gate closes and somebody's in there, they just pull up and it'll open.
But is it set you set it for your days and
Yes.
hours?
Yeah, you can set it for, whatever time you want to open, whatever time you want to close. Another thing too, and Joe, I'm sure you've probably seen this, when you're loading the yard waste, it's not a good idea to have cars pulling up and dropping off material, because
That happens a lot.
yeah, and because with snow plowing or whatever program you have, you know that, right? People they just keep driving, or they just pull up. And so I know that some of the sites, what they're thinking about doing is if they load on Mondays are really busy, they're not gonna be open on Monday mornings. But you folks already have days that are closed.
We're open Monday, Thursday, Saturday. In the fall, we were open 7 days, but that won't probably
Yeah.
be the case.
I'm just thinking, this is just based on my experience in the district, the leaves are, if you were to establish priorities, leaf collection is the biggest challenge overall, because it's the highest volume. But fortunately, it's not the highest, you can compact those leaves pretty well. And if you can grind something. The other thing is too, is I don't know if you had like a number of acres, or you had a place that you could, use that maybe isn't close to a residential area, because I was thinking about the Worsler brothers, maybe if they had more land, you could collect a higher volume and grind it there, but they're limited as far as the floodplain.
So we can go to your website for that grant for the gate?
Yeah, and if you call our office and you ask for Tiffany, in our office, Tiffany Hall, and just ask her for you to, she will send you a copy, and we'll be sending it out.
Okay.
I'm not sure, Rob, do we normally go through you on the grants for that? I wasn't quite sure.
Joe and I did it together last
Yeah,
year.
you both did it together, okay. And so you can send that, and, you just get a cost, I think they're probably an automatic gate. For the gate, everything was like 10,000, but you already have the gate, right?
Right.
Because of the sliding ones, so then you just have the power
Yes.
unit.
Yeah.
We have it down in Canton Township, and they work really, really well. Any other questions?
No, we appreciate your time.
Yes, thank you.
Doing
And
light
and also,
song.
I have to tell you, you have a beautiful place.
Thank you.
You have this is a nice room. And I love the presentation with the sheriff's department. You've got a great township. You're very good neighbors to us, and very good partners with the solid waste district, which we appreciate, because every time we have a problem or an issue, you've all been very, very responsive, and excellent staff here. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks. All right, so that takes us to Gold Star marker update. I do have a couple bullet points that Rob had given me. I'll go ahead and kind of touch on each one of these, and then if anybody else has anything to add, please do, because we're going to move forward with this. But actually, before I read this, remember that we got to be thinking about the footprint that we're going to place this on. So we know we've got some things in mind, but we want it to blend in with all the other things. So Rice's are securing again the Unilock and attempting to get that donation done.
It has been secured.
Ooh, that's even better. And again, I think each one of these projects we do, when somebody sees the finished product, then they're more anxious the next time to help and give to it. So, I think it's just win-win. We are setting the date for the dedication on June 14, 2018 at 7 p.m. and that'll be at Veterans Park.
Correct.
And you'll have to help me out with this one. That is done with conjunction with the
North Canton Garden Club.
North Canton
It's
Garden.
actually their ceremony, because they perform the ceremony, they solicit the speakers until they hand over the certificate. They did ask that, the board be present so they could hand over some sort of dedication, and then they asked who would accept that, and I said, in all cases, our board would certainly take possession of the ceremonial property.
Perfect. And then they're going to do a little cookies and punch reception
That's
following, and that'll be in the training room at Central Fire Station. And Chief Schellenberger and Becky have been making the securance of the dates for that. Trustee Hawes is working with some contacts to secure volunteer masons to help with the brickwork like they did before.
Yeah, and as short as I've exchanged some messages today with the local Six Masons Union. They think they'll be able to do something if for some reason that doesn't work. I've at least got a verbal out of my brother, his company, will look to free up possibly 2 people they do masonry work. So.
And the beauty with that, now that one has been built, all they gotta do is come by and look at it in their free time to say, now I see what you guys want. The last time it was kind of all in our heads. We weren't exactly sure what we were gonna do with it, but now they've got something to look at. So that might make things a little easier. And the last, we already talked about the partnering with the Garden Club, sponsoring the application and associated costs with the marker. So again, just another piece that is a part of that crown jewel that we call Veterans Park, and I think we're pretty excited about that. That kind of on top of the Purple Heart that we're thinking about as well. So
August 7th. Yes, sir.
all right, anything else on that? All right, we'll turn this over to the fiscal officer, Mr. Wolf.
Thank you. Fiscal Officer number 1 is a request for resolution to authorize the payment of pending warrants in the amount of $763,839.21.
So moved.
Second. It's been moved and seconded. Discussion.
Just to clarify, I mean, this is higher than normal, but a big portion of this goes for payment for the fire training facility and then just a normal sheriff's rotary payment. So between the two, it's about 500, not quite 600,000. So everything else is normal.
Good point. Roll call.
Mr. Hawes?
Yes.
Mr. Sabo?
Yes.
Mr. Lino?
Yes.
Fiscal Officer number 2 is a request for resolution to authorize the payment of regular payroll in an amount not to exceed $250,000.
I'll move on. Fiscal officer number 2.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Discussion. Roll call.
Mr. Hawes?
Yes.
Mr. Sabo?
Yes.
Mr. Lino?
Yes.
Fiscal Officer number 3 is a request for resolution to authorize payment for the following medical claims.
So moved.
I'll second. It's been moved and seconded. Discussion. Roll call.
Mr. Hawes?
Yes.
Mr. Sabo?
Yes.
Mr. Lino?
Yes.
Fiscal Officer number 4 is the investment report for the month of January. The interest amount was $10,714.03. Fiscal officer number 5 is the bank reconciliation for January. And fiscal officer number 6 is a request for resolution to enter into a contract with Comp Management to provide the services as detailed in the service contract, which is attached hereto and made a part of these minutes, and to approve payment of the administrative fee at a cost not to exceed $2,675 to be paid as follows.
So moved.
I'll second it.
It's been moved and seconded, discussion. Roll call.
Mr. Lino?
Yes.
Mr. Hawes?
Yes.
Mr. Sabo?
Yes.
And that concludes the fiscal officer report.
Thanks, Mr. Wolf. That takes us to the administrator.
Thank you. Item number 1 is a resolution to adopt the attached Plain Township Handbook revision in regards to employment termination effective immediately.
So moved.
Second. It's been moved and seconded, discussion.
It's just a simple update. I highlighted it in yellow there for you about providing a 2 weeks notice.
Okay, anything else? Roll call.
Mr. Lino?
Yes.
Mr. Sabo?
Yes.
Mr. Hawes?
Yes.
Thanks, Lisa. That takes us to the fire department, Chief Schallenberger.
Thank you. Item number 1 is our monthly report.
Is that at Rice's?
Yes. That is the right.
The song. That's how I did it. Nothing unusual. All right.
Next, thank you. Item number 2 is a resolution by the Plain Township Board of Trustees, Stark County, Ohio, to authorize the purchase and payment of cabinets, countertops, and windows and miscellaneous accessories from Orion Construction in the day room area of Station 4 per attached quotes not to exceed $13,000.
I'll move on FD2.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded, discussion.
Chief, do you care to explain just essentially why we're doing this, given the significant age?
Yeah, they're original to the station, built in 1983. And they, basically, we've got drawers coming loose on the cabinets, countertops starting to get bad. And then the windows, I've got a few that fogging, et cetera, from their age. And so we're hoping with a little better energy efficiency of the room, and then also, kind of update it a little bit too at the same time.
Anything else? Roll call?
Mr. Hawes?
Yes.
Mr. Lino?
Yes.
Mr. Sabo?
Yes.
Okay, item number 3 is a resolution by the Plain Township Board of Trustees, Stark County, Ohio, to authorize the purchase and payment for new firefighter and medic candidates from Psychological Resources, Inc., to be taken from account 10A15, not to exceed $2,500.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded, discussion.
This is a part of our process for new hirees. We're going to be hiring some people hopefully by the middle of April here. Along with physical testing and all this, it's part of that process to get them hired.
And we're using the same type of thing that Maslin and
Yes, Maslin and
yeah.
Alliance, and there's one in Summit County that also uses the same program.
Good. Anything else? Roll call, please.
Mr. Hawes?
Yes.
Mr. Lino?
Yes.
Mr. Sabo?
Yes. Thanks, Chief. And that takes us to the road department, Mr. Iacino.
Mr. Chairman, item number 1 is the monthly report for January. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
The patching in the potholes, maybe we can ask our friends at the state to revisit Market Easton. Again, it's absolutely horrible. I know Sean escalated that before for me.
Yeah, there's been some construction going on there too.
Yeah.
Joe, is that cold mixed with these cold roads? I mean, is that why they're hesitating? Because the cold mix really doesn't hold on these wet holding roads?
Well, actually, cold mix does hold, but cold mix has not been available to anybody all winter because the plant's been shut down.
Is that the
for
holdup now
EPI
for a lot of
reasons. So
these?
we've been using a high, it's a different mix, and it never gets hard, it stays,
Malleable.
right. So a lot of times that'll kick back out if they put it in a hole with water. So we're doing our best to keep them full with this stuff because we have no other thing to look for. Now we're catching, maybe next week, they might start the fire plant back up, so we might be able to get at least cold mix to finish the rest of the winter. So
Yeah, most likely, it just temporarily fills.
Just temporarily.
That's all it does.
that's all
I
we're
just
doing.
noticed that you don't see much action on
We're
it.
temporarily filling everywhere we can. So.
Very good.
Okay.
Item number 2 is a resolution to sign into agreement with Stark Regional Planning Commission to map drainage easements outside the right-of-way, not to exceed the amount of $15,000 from Fund 3C3 contracts, because Lisa won't pay for it.
So moved. I'll second. Been moved and seconded, discussion.
There's a lot of easements outside the right-of-way running between the backs of homes and some of these older allotments and the newer allotments. And we don't always have access to finding these easements. We think this is a good thing to do because we'll be electronically mapped for us. So we could pull it up along with our drainage maps that they've done in the past. And when we have questions about easements, we'll be able to assist our residents a lot better than ourselves.
It'll probably show up on your mapping too, so if somebody comes in, looking maybe for a piece of property and they're looking at it and seeing that easement through there, that,
Lisa used to help me, we used to do a lot of downtown work just to find an
Come in
easement.
handy when we issue permits as well.
Absolutely.
You can't put building on an easement.
Rick, looking at very through some of the stuff that's been built in some of those types of easements and
maybe, just maybe eliminate some neighborhood disputes.
Possibly, because there's probably a lot of barns and sheds parked on those easements. So, we know that for a fact.
You and I experienced a lot of that already.
Yeah. Okay, anything else? Roll call, please.
Mr. Sabo?
Yes.
Mr. Lino?
Yes.
Mr. Hawes?
yes.
Item number 3 is a resolution ending an agreement with IBI Group to acquire drainage easements with 3 landowners from the Linford Avenue Drainage Improvement Project, not to exceed $3,000 from Fund 3C3 contracts.
So moved.
Second. Moved and seconded, discussion. Anything special on here? It's 3 properties, right?
It's 3 properties. The county used to do this for us, but they recently had the employee that did it retire and they're not replacing her. So they did some legwork for us, and but we're going to have to hire somebody to actually acquire these in the future. And we don't have anybody on staff that's ever done it, including myself, so we're going to try IBI and see. This number could go up, but let's hope it stays at $3,000. This way we'll be able to do part of this project that we've been trying to get funding for 10 years through the Commissioner's Off-Road Drainage Program.
Anything else? Roll call.
Mr. Sabo?
Yes.
Mr. Lino?
Yes.
Mr. Hawes?
Yes.
And item number 4 is a resolution to authorize the purchase of gasoline, oil, and diesel fuel from McIntosh Oil at cost not to exceed $20,000.
So moved.
Second. Moved and seconded, discussion. Roll call.
Mr. Lino?
Yes.
Mr. Sabo?
Yes.
Mr. Hawes?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks, Joe. That takes us to zoning. Mr. Ferrara?
Yes, sir. The first item on the agenda is the monthly report.
Do you have any questions on that? What's next?
I'm sorry, item number 2 is a resolution to accept a quote for the remodeling and target hardening of the Township Hall foyer and to authorize payment from Fund 01B05D in an amount not to exceed $18,000. We've received 3 quotes from 3 very reputable firms. The first quote, or actually the third on the list, Viking Glass, was for polycarbonate. And the polycarbonate will, as we clean it, begin to scratch. Little micro scratches build up, and it'll, after time, become fine. So we didn't want to go with the with the polycarbonate. And Stark Glass and Waltz Glass gave us a bid for the glass coated polycarbonate. So when we clean it, we're cleaning glass and it'll stay clean. Stark Glass and Waltz Glass were very close in their bids, surprisingly close. Stark Glass, on their bid, they came in very confident when it came to building the wood section as well in the foyer. They knew what they were talking about when it came to remodeling the wood portion. And so we're not just doing glass, we're adding countertops. And so my recommendation would be for Stark Glass.
Also move.
Second. It's been moved and seconded. Discussion. Roll call.
Mr. Sabo?
Yes.
Mr. Lino?
Yes.
Mr. Hawes?
Yes.
Item number 2, item number 3 is a resolution to amend Resolution 17586 that was to reappoint Scott Craig to the Plain Township Board of Zoning Commission for a 5-year term commencing January 1st, 2018, expiring December 31st, 2022. The original amendment had the expiration date of 2023.
So moved.
Second. It's been moved and seconded. Discussion. Roll call.
Mr. Sabo?
Yes.
Mr. Lino?
Yes.
Mr. Hawes?
Yes.
Item number 4 is a resolution to amend Resolution 17587 to reappoint Jeff Sutton to the Plain Township Board of Zoning Appeals for a 5-year term commencing January 1st, 2018, expiring December 31st, 2022, and that was the same issue.
I'll move on zoning 4A.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Discussion. Roll call.
Mr. Sabo?
Yes.
Mr. Lino?
Yes.
Mr. Hawes?
Yes.
Item number 5 is a resolution to set a hearing date for the property located at 2537 Rome Northeast, parcel number 5215265.
I will move on zoning 5.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Discussion. Do we have a time on that? I can't remember. How do we do that? Do we do that usually at 6:15 for these issues?
Isn't this the same as the one we just did?
Oh, that's right. We don't have a hearing on this. We got to decide on it. And
You're
then-
setting the hearing
Yes,
for,
correct. Yeah.
for the 13th?
Yeah.
Does Mr. Mathis know about it?
Yes, he does.
Okay, good.
We're good.
Yes, yes. There. Anything else? Roll call.
Mr. Sabo?
Yes.
Mr. Lino?
Yes.
Mr. Hawes?
Yes.
And that's all I have, sir.
Thank you. That takes us to Parks, Mr. Steinberg.
Thank you. Item number 1 is my monthly report.
What did you have to pay for the cover?
Yeah, is that
Cover model.
Is that a copyrighted picture on the front?
Actually, I think he owes me coffee and a helmet. And since you're pointing out, I'd like to thank Jessica for her wonderful article about the golf. it was a huge success and help to us.
Yeah, that'd be, hopefully that'll get the word out, thank you, yes.
So when we removed the crab trees from the soccer ball pit, were they diseased or overgrowing or?
For what? The crab apples? The crab apples, we did indeed remove every other one around the patio. I know we were waiting for a visit to make sure that the ones around the barn, we could do the same thing with.
Yeah, we talked about that a while ago, if I remember correctly.
We've been going through the
Yeah,
process.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why we're going through the process, yeah.
Mhm.
You are correct.
Okay.
Item number 2 is a resolution to enter into agreement and authorize payment to Rice's Landscapes, redefined in the amount of $5,065 to be paid from funds 01F02, 14A04B, and 01F02A for mulch around the big beds and mulch, fibrous mulch in the playground areas. With the new Otarma, oh sorry, I'll wait till discussion.
I'll second.
I
Discussion, sorry.
So-
Discussion.
With the new Otarma laws, we have to measure our playgrounds at 7 inches every single day to make sure they match. We have to rake back every single day some of the divots and stuff that are created, which is going to take an exponential amount of time on top of the playground checklist we now have to fill out each and every day. We're looking at roughly 2 man-hours a day times 5 days a week is roughly 10 man-hours dedicated specifically to the playgrounds. That doesn't even include anything else that we normally do in morning cleanup and things of that nature. So obviously having their help to blow in the big beds is a help to us because of the time we're now required to spend elsewhere.
Just up for discussion, I just have we're doing the mulching in March, correct?
That is correct.
So I just have a concern. First of all, Rice is doing an excellent job. They're very professional. It's going to be done very well. The concern I have is that the month of March, I'm a little worried about the tree saplings, the seedlings, the little helicopters that fall, the oak trees have those little furry things that fall. Then the hard rain in March and April, could the beds be washed out? Are we maybe too early? I mean, are we on schedule? Because I'm just worried about, we're gonna do this professional job, which he will do, but now, when May comes, you have a mulch bed full of seedlings, full of
I think it's
maybe
only,
washed out beds because of the hard rains of the April showers. And that's my only concern, that we try to keep these parks looking the way they are, and then we come in, spend that money, and then now we have.
now we're back, yeah.
Just a concern.
No, it's a fair concern, and my answer to that question is there are a couple beds where trees would be affected, or would affect the density based on what they would drop. Most of the big, now we're not talking about any tree rings or any smaller beds. There's roughly, I think, 2 or 3 at Alpine, there's 2 at Veterans and none at Diamond that we're concerned about. Of those, I think there's 1 at Veterans coming around the corner on the path to the dog park, and the 1 at Alpine that sits deep, that's the big bed. So I guess there's always those concerns. I'm not diminishing them in any way, shape, or form. I guess it's the same as if we lay it down later and some of the weeds start to grow and we're still getting them to pop up and knocking them down anyway. I guess it's the same type of maintenance. It could wash out, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that.
Well, it can be washed out in the summer or a hard rain.
I don't mean in the summer, I mean, yeah.
But now, just the concern is that we spend that money to make it looking good before, May comes, and then all of a sudden we might have washed out beds and.
We could.
It's possible, I'm just.
Yeah, I approach it from the perspective of the
Hold him
time.
off, or, I mean, I know he's busy, he has a schedule, do we hold him off and have him come at maybe another time? I don't know, I'm just throwing this out there,
Because
because
his business model's changed.
yeah, it's changed.
I mean, the flexibility would be my concern, start getting in there.
It would be hard to get him to come up, because he's gonna.
It is harder only because with his business model changing, he's so deep into the private sector of what he's doing. He's extended the offer in good partnership to 3 of our communities, us, North Canton City, and Canton City, because of the continued relationship that we've had with him. He's fitting us into that schedule with those big trucks because of what they do. That being said, that's certainly.
Just a concern like.
It's a fair.
I think that's valid, though.
Our
Monitor
parks
it.
are professional
Yeah.
looking, and then this could take could take some away.
What if we took some socks around the beds that could get washed out, the big bed? I think we're only talking about possibly the two at Veterans and maybe one at Alpine that could get washed out, because the other one's raised beds, if you remember, there's kind of a, for lack of a better expression, retaining walls on that really big one that we're talking about anyway.
What's the possibility of covering any of those where the heavy trees are? And then we have beautiful mulch, and then we have no seating on it because they're covered and you take the covers off.
I can certainly check into the cost of
I
those
just, you know,
tarps.
again, I just bring it up because I'm just.
It's fair.
There's tarps and stuff like that and stuff. I don't know, honestly, I don't pay that much attention, honestly.
Why don't I circle back to Brian Rice and ask the question?
See, yeah, so.
My expertise of mulching is, I don't like it.
I don't like it either.
I'm actually one of the reasons why there's extra volume, because I shifted the stone, so.
Anything else?
That's all I have.
Mr. Sabo?
Yes.
Mr. Lino?
Yes.
Mr. Hawes?
Yes. Thank you, Rob. That takes us to Law Director. Any concerns? Communications. Sorry about that. I'll slow down a little bit.
That's okay.
Communications.
I have a communication from Keith Bennett, your Stark County engineer, in regards to the annual meeting with the road superintendents only, and then the township trustees and fiscal officers. The township trustees and fiscal officers is going to be in conjunction with Stark County Township Association monthly meeting, which is March 15th at our Central Fire Station 1 at 5:30 p.m. On Friday, March 16th at 9 a.m. is the meeting with the road superintendents at the Stark County Engineer. And let me point out, they like to say road superintendents only. So mark your calendars and please RSVP to Marilyn if you plan on attending. And that's the end of communications.
Yeah, that's the only way I'll remember. Thank you. Yeah, that's the only thing I don't remember. I'm old school.
Me too.
Thank you. That takes us to the portion of our meeting where we have public speaks. If there's anybody in the audience that wishes to address the board, please give your name and address to the fiscal officer for documentation. And do we have anybody at all that wishes to speak? Mrs. Pocock.
Yes, my name is Judy Pocock, and I live at, excuse me, at 4207 Plain Center Northeast. I have two questions. First of all, my property shares a common boundary with Meadow Lake Golf Course. And I would like to know if the trustees have been involved or can give me any information about the current status of Meadow Lake. I know that you have probably seen in the newspaper that the EPA is after them finally about the water problem which has gone on there for many years. I would be interested if you've had any communication with the bars or with the EPA or whatever.
Good question. Mr. Haas has been working on that, so.
I've actually had multiple conversations with Kirk Schuring. The foreclosure sale that the EPA was pushing through the State Attorney General's office has been stayed for 60 days. During that 60 days, the expectation is they will come up and provide a schedule for when they're going to connect to Canton City Water, as well as, in short, what their payment plan is, or how they plan to pay the EPA's fines, which are in excess of, with accumulated interest and so forth, are, I think, over $425,000. The bars have approached the city of Canton about having it annexed. It's a give and take. I mean, that has always been Roy's Achilles heel, that, I'm not going into the city, forget it. So that's why he tried pushing the petition for incorporating the township, and that failed miserably. And in short, they're at the end of their rope, and this is the only means they have, in that they got to mitigate the water issue. We haven't had direct conversation with the bars. In fact, it's been even very limited with the city of Canton, because outside of having conversation with Kirk Schuring, I've had conversation with Sam Slyman, who handles the annexations and so forth. And to Canton's credit, even as contentious as we had some dealings last year, City of Canton didn't have to reach out to us and give us any notification as early as they did on the Type 2 expedited annexation. They could have just done it, and it is what it is. In short, you know, the conversation points on whether or not, you know, with the annexation, you know, how's that gonna affect the bars financially? Quite frankly, that's a matter of private discussion and negotiation. That's not anything that we play a role in. I mean, and I'm not gonna get into speculative comments, but the likelihood is that those fees and fines, they may be reduced. It's based upon the guidance that Kirk Schuring provided to me. It's highly unlikely they're going to see any significant reduction in it. But I mean, that's something that between the bars and the EPA and the State Attorney General's office, you know, until anything's annexed into the city of Canton, it continues to be Plain Township property, to which, you know, whether it's noise complaints or whatever, our sheriff's office will continue to respond to that. You know, if they wanted to develop or do something on that property right now, it still goes through Plain Township zoning and permitting, but as soon as that property would be annexed into the city of Canton, anything from development, that would have to go before Canton City Council, or Canton City's building department and so forth. To the noise complaints are going to have to be fielded and channeled right through the Canton City Police Department on that. So that's essentially where it's at. We'll see over the next 60 days what comes to, but the city of Canton, to their credit, did reach out early, gave us a courtesy heads up of what's going on. We're talking along with Kirk Schuring, and the ball's in the bar's court on how they're going to proceed moving forward. And just looking at history, I don't think it's safe for any of us to exactly speculate how exactly that'll turn out. So,
my second question then would be, in the event that this does become annexed to the city of Canton, Meadow Lake Golf Course, because it's a sizable tract of land, what does this do with the property owners like I am that are adjacent around the golf course? What happens to us if the golf course, which would be the larger part of a certain section, would be annexed to the city? What
I mean,
would they have to let us do?
you're not being annexed, so you would still fall under Plain Township jurisdiction. But if, say, there was a proposed development of any scope and scale, I mean, that's going to go before the city of Canton. So I'm sure they've probably got certain processes in place to where they have to notify residents within a certain distance. And in that situation, you would have to be compelled to show up to Canton City Council meeting to voice your concern. How Canton City Council and their leadership responds to that, we can't speak to that.
If they took so many, if they notified all of us that they were going to have a hearing on this matter, and all of us who were adjacent went to the meeting, and those people also decided it would be a majority rule that the property owners that were adjacent, if most of them decided they wanted to be annexed to the city, everyone would have to go?
No. It's on a parcel by parcel, so if you don't want annexed, they can't. They
Well,
cannot.
let me stop you.
Yeah.
It's not exactly. It's a numbers game. So the particular type of annexation they're doing now is an expedited type 2 that would include one parcel. Would not include any of your parcels.
Right.
But if you adjoining landowners got together and there were above 50% of you that wanted to be annexed, everybody would be on that petition. But in that particular scenario, there's a hearing. There isn't one in the expedited type 2 situation. That's just a review. The hearing gives you the opportunity to go, your neighbors the opportunity to go, and in fact, people within about a half-mile radius, I think the statute says, the opportunity to go and give testimony as to why you shouldn't be annexed. So you have a voice in that particular situation. But it's still possible, at least, to be taken in without wanting to go.
And that hearing would be before
The Stark County Commissioners.
Yeah, that would not be, the hearing would not be with officials from the city of Canton. That would be with the Stark County Commissioners.
And we would be notified?
Absolutely.
Oh, absolutely.
This is
Yeah,
not
you're
something-
absolutely notified of that, of when that hearing is and all that good stuff.
So Eric, I mean, let's play a theoretical. I got a straight line, I've got, say, 14 parcels. I got 5 on this end that want in and 3 on that end. You're telling me the few in the middle, those 6 people that want nothing to do with it
Yeah.
are screwed.
Yeah, well, they're
Well,
not screwed. They get the opportunity to present as to why it's not for what's called the general good of the territory.
I mean, because there's other parcels, if they're touching Meadow Lake, I mean, we've got areas in the township where there's carve out.
Sure.
Why would that not, I mean, something like that, where, okay, these 5 want in, boom, they'll get it. These 6 we're not touching. The next 3, because they're still touching Meadow Lake, which is annexed. Okay, hey, you can come in too.
Yeah.
I would,
Anytime you have the hearing portion of it, we haven't had one of those in a long time because they've just been focused kind of in the Hall of Fame area with expedited. But anytime you have the hearing portion of it, there's all kinds of arguments you can make. And I will tell you, if past history were to hold true, these guys would send me to that hearing as well to argue as to why it shouldn't be incorporated in the city of Canton.
So you would be, so to speak, representing those of us who wish to remain in the township?
Yes,
We
so to
would have
speak.
legal
I'd be working for the board, but our interests would be aligned.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
You know, because there's 2 issues. You got those people that absolutely want to, and then you have those people that say, no way. Well, we're gonna fight for the people that say, no way.
Correct.
Right, okay.
Anything else, Mrs. Pocock?
No, I'm finished, thank you.
Mr. Brennan?
Yeah, Bob Brenneman, 4133 Plains Center Northeast. Yeah, all right, once Meadow Lake's annexed into the city,
If.
well, they're not digging an oil well over there now, you know, I'm sure that they're doing something over there. You can hear the jackhammers, but, once they're annexed into the city, and I appreciate all the help you've given me, you know, for almost, 8, 9, 10 years worth of problems over there. I understand the police, but could I still, contact some of the trustees if I have any questions as to what might go on over there, you know, to help, since I'm in Plain Township, as to what?
you can always contact us as your trustees. I mean, you may get a quick, I'm not sure what's going on,
Yeah.
so I'm gonna need to call the Canton City Councilman.
I expect
or the
something's gonna
folks in
happen,
the leadership
you
as
know,
well.
well, in the next 60 days, I'm
I
sure.
should tell you what's going
Yeah.
on if you ask.
Yes.
We just don't have any
We may not have any-
authoritative thing that we
Nothing,
can
yeah.
do. No, nothing legislatively that we could do.
But now, the question, since they would be in the city of Canton, and I'd be Plain Township, if they would decide to put a big building up over there, would have no say-so about that.
I mean,
You can still go to the city council meeting when they, if they have one, some kind of zoning change or some kind of approval that they have to do. I don't know how,
with the timetables and.
yeah, I don't know how they work or how they would perceive that, given that you're a township resident, but you're obviously affected. You at least have a public forum.
I will say, I will say, the Ward 8 councilman over there currently is a pretty responsive individual, regardless of where he stands on something. He is highly
Edmund Mack.
Yeah, exactly. Edmund's been highly responsive, I can tell you based upon my past dealings with him, so.
Yeah, I had contact with him 6 or 7 years ago with him there, but I realize something's going on over there now, the digging, and the caution tape's up, and, so I'm sure they're preparing to, put water in over there.
Well, there's no signed agreements or anything.
No.
Can't-
Nothing, yeah.
Not yet.
Can't, so I,
But, like I said, Scott got the hers.
Yeah.
Call, so.
Anything else? Anybody else wish to address the board at this time? All right. based on that, then we have a motion to approve the minutes of February 13th, 2017. And I'll move 2000, yeah, that should say.
18, it says 17.
Yeah, it does say, let the record show that should say 2018.
Got it.
Both places. I'll move on the approval of minutes. Second. Moved and seconded, discussion. Roll call.
Mr. Lino?
Yes.
Mr. Sabo?
Yes.
Mr. Hawes?
Yes. And we do have a need for an executive session. Be it hereby resolved by the Plain Township Board of Trustees, Stark County, Ohio, to adjourn to executive session at 7:50 p.m. from this regular meeting of February 27th, as authorized under Ohio Revised Code 12122G for the purpose of the consideration of 1D, discipline of a public employee or official, and 4, preparing for, conducting, or reviewing negotiations or bargaining sessions with public employees.
Second.
Been moved and seconded, discussion, roll call.
Mr. Lino?
Yes.
Mr. Sabo?
Yes.
Mr. Hawes?
Yes.
I need to be long night, but I just,
Oh, okay.
that's, it's gonna be long.
I told Joe to go,
I know.
and Eric will do it, and John, you were there.
We're not taking the cake back.
You win.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We're doing that now?
It's like long.
I'm good, how are you? Nice to see you. I can get settled and then come back. Perfect.
Hi there. Good, how are you doing?
That's right.
Oh, okay, all right, yes. I knew you looked familiar.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, it is nice meeting you, yes. Thanks. How are you? Nice.
Okay.
Great.
Crazy.
Yeah.
I appreciate
No,
you guys.
that-